What's up, everybody? I'm Hunter Vaness. This is the early tea time live stream. It is PGA Championship week. We are brought to you by Fantasy Points here today. Really excited to dive into this event here. Before we get started, again, don't forget about the Fantasy Points subscription that is available to you all. Get a 10% discount by using the code VANESS22. That's two N's and two S's. Again, we are presented by Fantasy Points. Again, it is PGA Championship week. I am so excited to be joined today by my special guest. First, I'd like to introduce him a little bit here. He is my friend from the neighboring state of Iowa. He's another one of those content kings on Twitter. He is a Photoshop magician. I think I'm gonna, ask him for Photoshop lessons sometime this summer. We will see. He is known as the Model Maniac, also known as Byron. How you doing, my man?
Dude, what a wonderful intro. Thank you so much for that. Yeah, the Photoshop thing's kind of taken off lately. It's been fun to, switch Alex Noren's face onto some Jason Momoas here and there. But at the end of the day, we're still trying to pick some winners and, make all the stats make sense for ourselves. So it's been a blast hanging out on Twitter, and thanks for having me on the show. Looking forward to it, man.
Yeah, you bet, man. You bet. Thanks for joining me today. Yeah, it is always all fun and games, but right, the main goal is to, of course, pick winners, and that is what we're trying to do here today. It is PGA Championship week. We're going to head to Southern Hills. Before we do that, let's talk a little bit about the Byron Nelson. Perfect person to talk to here with Byron, of course. How did you do last week? KH Lee took it down, I think, with the score of 26 under par. It was that birdie fest that we were all expecting. How'd you do last week?
Yeah, I was close. I had a Justin Thomas outright that I snagged during the round one where he, fell back a little bit. I got it at 35-1 and hoped he could, do what he does best and fire it down the stretch, but to no avail. However, we'll see what he can get up to this week. I think his game's going in the right direction. DFS ways, man, I had a ton of 6-for-6s make it through and still just kind of broke even. JT wasn't doing enough. He didn't get to the top of the board, and Adam Scott and Jason Kokrak, just great plays leverage wise, just couldn't get into the points enough. So it was a okay week for me.
Cool. Yeah, it's tough. DFS is so tough. I mean, it's really hard, finding the right plays, right? But also trying to choose those leverage points. They feel like great plays going into it, but it's just hard to find that right balance between getting too risky, but also trying to play some chalk plays because they do hit, but they also sometimes fall flat on their face, like Sam Burns and Zalatoris did for myself. So really not a good week of DFS for me. I had to do a little reflecting, but luckily I had a Munoz first round leader ticket, so that kind of paid, most of the week and more. So that was really good to have, of course, too. So any other thoughts on the Byron Nelson before we, look ahead here at Southern Hills?
It's always just I try and stay. Sorry about this.
You're good.
He's a big fan of the Byron Nelson as well. But birdie fests are always volatile for me. I try and limit my exposure and then go from there because you never know, like what's happening right now. Just anything out of nowhere can just happen, and any sort of important play that you might have as a core piece can just Sam Burns or Zalatoris just out of nowhere just miss the cut, like you said, and it's just brutal. So always limiting expectations for an event like that and hoping for the best, but expecting the worst. So
yeah, I'm with you. The birdie fests are tough. There's just so many things that need to go your way. Of course, I think on Thursday I already felt out of it because my guys were at even or one over par, and you really can't afford to do that in one of the rounds in one of these birdie fests, especially when that cut is getting to 5 under par there. So I agree with you. I should probably think about that. Going into future birdie fest, maybe limit the exposure just a little bit. I tweeted it out. I definitely felt like an idiot not playing KH Lee. I even wanted to tweet it out last week. Like, are we really sure we shouldn't be playing KH Lee on the course that he won at last year? And I did not, bite down on that whatsoever. So he definitely punched me in my face with that. It's cool to see him, win another event here. I think this is the first time we've had a back-to-back winner in a couple of years now. Am I correct on that?
I think Sam Burns did it at the Valspar.
That's true. Yeah.
And I think there might be one other. I'm not entirely sure, but
yeah,
it was kind of like a double-edged sword. If KH Lee never won, Spieth would have gone back-to-back in back-to-back events. So we would have had back-to-back winners regardless, which is kind of both kind of elements of thought processing would have happened, where you got two back-to-back variations happening, which is weird.
Yeah,
So
that is a good point. I guess I don't know which is more rare, the back-to-back victory with Spieth or KH Lee winning back-to-back on the same course, but
yeah,
yeah, good point. Well, we'll get into Spieth here in a little bit. I do like the Dallas native myself this week, but let's talk about this course a little bit. I'll do a quick course preview here. If there's anything that I'm missing or anything that you want to jump in on, feel free to interrupt me at any point here. So,
cool.
again, it is going to be Southern Hills. The course was designed by Perry Maxwell in 1936. It did have the restoration by Gil Hans in 2018. There's been a lot of talk about that already this week. It is going to be a par 70 track, 4 par 3s, 12 par 4s, and 2 par 5s. I believe they changed one of the par 5s to be a par 4 to bring that down. The distance is going to be 7,556 yards. It is a really long course. It's a par 70 track that, again, measures over 7,500 yards. For context, when we played or when we watched them play at Augusta, that's a 7,500-yard course that is par 72. So we knock a couple strokes down on the par. This is really going to be a beast, in my opinion. I'll ask you right now, I guess, are you going to favor accuracy or distance? We'll get into the stats here in a little bit, but I kind of wanted to ask you this right away. Are you putting an emphasis on distance or accuracy this week?
I'm just leaning towards general off the tee play, or however you get it done off the tee. But if I know Cam Smith is the first guy that I'm thinking of when we were chatting about that video where they fly over all the holes and they break down the course, and I'm just looking at that creek, man, and I can just see that that's a penalty too. It's not like you're hitting it into the trees and chipping out. You're dropping and then punching out if you hit it in there. So I don't know how close that is to the fairway. So I'm still trying to make up my mind how much accuracy is going to play a part here this week, especially when the wind blows. But I think definitely going to throw some good drives gained in the mix for sure.
Yeah, I like that stat too. The good drives gained.
Yeah.
We see a lot of dog legs this week. I just want guys that can put it in the correct spot to get that good scoring opportunity, which that stat I believe measures that more than the fairways gained. So
Yeah.
good point there. Yeah, I'm definitely looking at just overall off the tee. I know this is a long course, but I don't know. I still want guys that can put it in the right spot because with all these dog legs, I don't want, and like you said, the creek there, I don't want guys who are spraying it or potentially still hitting it into the trees. I know they cleared a few of those out, but yeah, I'm with you. I
Yeah.
like both of those there. So you
Yeah.
talk
And
about
just
the creek. Go ahead. Sorry.
on the distance side, I think the majority of that distance comes from those 2 par 5s that are both 630 yards plus or whatever. And I don't think anyone in this field apart from Bryson would be able to get to them in two. And it's going to be a 3-shotter course, right? So that's where you can almost chop off 400 yards almost, or 200, 300 yards quite easily on just those 2 holes because that long approach is taken out of the equation.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think those shorter hitters won't, have that disadvantage this week due to those longer par 5s. I think everyone's
Yeah.
probably going to be laying up into those on 3 shots there,
Yeah.
and then it just comes into a wedges contest and
Exactly.
putting
Yeah.
contest too. So yeah, we can really throw out par 5 scoring this week, in my opinion. I know there's only 2 of them, but which is a little bit different than the last couple of weeks. We've seen so many scoreable par 5s. It's been so important. So a little bit different. You're right. Those longer par 5s do take a lot of that yardage. So we're going to see tree line fairways, Bermuda grass fairways, again, 10 dog legs. I believe I have that number right. I believe the key word this week are slopes and greens. That's really what I've been hearing quite a bit, and the creek too as well. There are elevation changes and rolling hills all throughout the property. These slopes are going to cause many approach shots to have those uneven lies that we've seen at the British Open last year, was the first event that came to my mind with that. We're also going to see smaller greens. I heard about it in just about every video that I watched. The average green size is just over 5,000 square feet, which is a little bit below tour average. And most of the greens at Southern Hills, the edges of them simply will just not hold a rolling golf ball. They've been shaved off. They are very sloping. You'll have those undulations, kind of like at Augusta. I don't want to ever compare anything to Augusta, but I do think we're going to see a lot of tricky greens, a lot of slopes throughout the greens that, again, will be probably one of the toughest tests. Am I right on that, or what have you been hearing this week?
Absolutely. I think I read something somewhere that they'd increase the surface area of the greens by like 15%, but the general proximity on the green that the golf ball will remain at is decreased by 20%. So they've made them bigger, but made them small at the same time, just by making them that turtle shell type convex shape. That anything errant is just going to roll off into who knows where. Bunkers and collection areas. So
Yep.
I agree.
I'm with you. And I think when Hans was talking about it on the video with the fried egg, he talked about how they shaved off a lot of the rough on these greens. And, when you have the long rough around the green, sometimes it'll catch the ball when it falls off the green, of course, or when it rolls off. But, when it's shorter grass, those balls are going to be rolling into bunkers, into hazards, potentially even in the creek. We'll see what it looks like, of course. But yeah, I think the greens are really going to be difficult. I've been hearing a lot of Augusta comps, at least on the green side of things, but I do think it'll be pretty tough.
Yeah.
87 sand bunkers. There are a lot of deep bunkers that protect a lot of the holes. You'll see around 3 to 4 bunkers, again, guarding each of the greens. The restoration changed these a little bit as well. You talked about it earlier. There's 15 holes with a water hazard that either runs through the middle of the fairway or along the side. There are a few ponds as well, but you're really going to see that creek that just slices across the middle of the fairway. So I really think that's going to be interesting to see just how it impacts scores, I guess. We don't really see that a whole lot where we see a creek that just runs right down the side of the fairway. We were talking about it in the DMs on Twitter, how just detrimental to my golf game that would be if I was playing on a course like that. So what do you think of the creek this week? You mentioned a little bit earlier, especially with that Cam Smith comparison, or just how you think those maybe players who are shaky off the tee, how do you think they will do with the creek this week?
Yeah. And, just kind of going back to Cam Smith, I just watched a lot of his golf. And if he knows that creek is going to be down the right-hand side, that snap hook's coming into play, and then it's going to bail out the other direction. So whichever side the creek's on, a lot of guys are going to try their best to avoid it and bail out to the other side of the fairway, which is most likely designed to be penal from that direction coming in. It sounds like on these videos we've been watching, they want you to challenge the creek so that you can have the best angle at the greens on approach. So, safe drives aren't necessarily going to be helping you score that well unless you can get your irons into, the places on the greens that matter. So it's going to be interesting. And it's always fun going to a course that we don't have a lot of history on too, because, that's just, you got to put on the Bob Ross wig kind of thing and figure out, okay, manufacture some ideas and some theoretical proximities like we'll get into. And it's interesting. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're right. These last 3-4 weeks have all been on courses that there's limited information, limited data out there as well. So it's been a little bit difficult coming up with, just what do we need to look at, key stats or that kind of stuff, of course, these last few weeks, especially again with this new course. Not a new course. We saw it the last time was in 2007 when Tiger won, but we just don't see it on a year-to-year basis. And they've changed a lot of things since 2007 as well with that restoration too. So any other course tidbits or anything that you want to hit on here before we move on to the key stats?
Yeah, I'm just really focusing on bogey avoidance around the green game, and I've got quite a bit of putting sprinkled in on bent and some recent good putting stats as well. Just covering all the bases there, and that's mainly it from my model standpoint. Nothing too crazy other than everything else you mentioned. So I agree.
Cool. Thank you, man. I appreciate it. So let's get into those key stats. These are the 6 that I have in my article, and I'd like to, ask you a little bit about your model process and that kind of stuff here in a bit. But some of the 6, more broad stats that I'm looking at this week are strokes gained off the tee. Again, we talked about, we don't really need to emphasize distance over accuracy too much. One of the two, it's up to everyone which one they decide. But I think both of us are, looking at off the tee in general. Strokes gained approach, that's always going to be important no matter where you're at. Around the green as well, scrambling, I think is going to be really important. I have putting on fast bent grass greens, bogey avoidance as well. We're not in a birdie fest, and then strokes gained on windy conditions. We'll talk about the wind here in a little bit, but those are just my 6, more broad stats. I'd like to ask you, again, you are the model maniac on Twitter. You are a king at putting out your model every single week. I love, looking at the color coordination as well that you have out there. You are an Excel wizard, in my opinion. Can you talk about your process? You don't have to, it's up to you, how deep you want to go into this, but Where does it start? How do you make certain decisions? And how do you get to the final point?
Cool. So the basis of the model is it started off as a blank Excel spreadsheet, and you can. I might have something in the pipeline soon and put out a nice little series of how to build one on your own for free, and use PGA Tour stats that are available to everyone. So that's what I use, and my model is based off of long run metrics. So I have it currently set at 60% for 2021 stats, and then 40% for 2022. So if guys kind of pop quickly, it doesn't necessarily take that into account. So it really helps provide consistent players up top. And then, kind of picking and choosing different stats as we go along. I typically try and use correlations from Data Golf and, Fantasy National, that they provide you with which courses, approach is the most significant on. And then when it comes to courses like this, you just got to watch videos and kind of just feel, all right, is it going to be an accuracy week? Is it going to be a distance? Going to be a bit of both? What are these, what's the chipping going to be like? How much is putting going to be important? It's a major, what's the wind doing? So, that's why I think I've got a lot of putting in here, typically a lot more than normal, just to kind of counterbalance the tough scoring conditions. I think they're going to have to be making a lot of clutch pass saves this week. So that's kind of how we go there. And then I use it to bet on top 20s, top 30s, top 40s. And it kicks ass when it does matchups, man. So it's awesome, and it's worked out really well for me so far.
Yeah, it's awesome. No, it's definitely been gaining a lot of steam on Twitter. It's really cool to see you put it out this week or in every week, to be honest. And
Yeah.
keep doing that. Keep up the
Thank
good
you.
work there. So, yeah, you bet, man. So, do you want to talk about some of the other stats in your model this week? Again, I kind of highlighted on 6 main ones that I'm looking at this week. Again, I really want strong off the tee players. Approach is always going to be important. I think it's really you'd have to be very similar to Augusta. You have to be strong in approach or around the green. You have to be drilling these greens, and even the best iron players aren't going to hit every single green. I mean, they don't on a on a typical basis anyways, but it's going to be windy. These greens have a lot of slopes. It could just take one bad bounce or one, hitting it like
A
half a
foot.
foot in the
Yeah.
wrong spot. Yeah, exactly. And it could just roll off into a hazard potentially. So you definitely need to have a strong around the green game or, be a good scrambler as well. You're going to have to save par quite a bit. Anything else that I'm missing besides those 6 or anything that's a little more specific, I guess? I kind of have some broad stats like off the tee and approach, that kind of stuff. I'm going to pull up your proximity chart here in a second, but go ahead, dive into some other stats that you're looking at this week.
Yeah. So typically I weight approach about 35% weighting. It's the biggest proportion that I put in my model is approach. Obviously, I think everyone does that. And then I balance it out over what you're going to pull up now. I use that to kind of prorate a proximity ranges, which I think is really important, because there's guys like John Rahm who, when it comes to this kind of situation, there's going to be a lot of opportunities to hit wedges on these par 5. So he's a very good par 5 scorer, but he's going to be laying up on those 2 long par 5s into wedge ranges. And if you go look at his proximity numbers from the wedges, it's not necessarily going to provide him with, really good birdie looks over and over again. So I use that, and there's not necessarily a significant bucket of weighting this week that we're going to be dealing with. So it's just kind of evenly spread out like a nice sandwich on PB&J. But so that's a total of 35%. Then I got 15% around the greens, and then another 15% of just last 24 rounds in putting, 5%, bent putting, last 57% putting, just baseline 3%, and then bogey avoidance. So there's a lot of safe stats in this model. And then we've got good drives gain, 5%, off the tee 10%, and then recent off the tee 5. So, it's kind of safe. It's kind of cautionary. Just looking to protect as much as we can. I don't think we're going to be putting the foot on the gas at all this week. So,
Yeah, I'm with you.
yeah.
I think you nailed that. And I think a lot of those stats correlate with each other on these, bogey avoidance courses rather than the birdie fest courses too.
Yeah.
Just because they just tie in together quite a bit. So I will share the screen here quick if I can do that. Perfect. Awesome. So that's your proximity chart that I was looking at. I'll have you talk about this as well. I do have a question for you too. You can answer these in whatever order that you'd like to. As someone who's trying to get better at the model process, Do you change you're talking about the percentages and the weights that you put on each of these stats each week. Do you, like, mess around with that? So, for example, if you put 10% in, for certain stats, you run it one time, do you, change that multiple times, or do you just kinda put it right away and then stick with it? Or how do you come up with some of those percentages? I know obviously it's different for everyone, but talk about that process a little bit if you
Yeah,
could.
absolutely. So every week I typically try and put out a power rankings by with emphasis on X, and then I have the model run. So I'll do my maniac version, which I think is what I want to kind of zone in on, have my own percentages like this. But it does change week to week. But then once I've put that in, all the other branches or sub models will emphasize off the tee, will emphasize approach by an extra 15%. It will emphasize distance, birdies, bogeys, so then you can take a look at that in a big picture and see, okay, are there any big gainers, big losers? Let's take putting out. Let's emphasize putting. Cam Smith is number one in my model if we add another 15% of putting onto the situation. So it provides you with a nice big picture, and then you can kind of just hide columns as you go along and say, okay, I don't think birdie making is going to be important. Par fives, let's take those two out. Okay, now let's see who's really still remaining constant across the board. So it does change, and it requires a holistic view in order to get a good picture of how guys are going to play this week. So
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, I probably took the a long time to learn this, but again, stats are, like you said, more just to paint a picture. It's just to help you out. For me, it just helps me feel confident in my plays more than anything, to where I'm not, staying up at, until 2 o'clock in the morning trying to change lineups around a little bit there. So I appreciate you sharing that a little bit.
yeah.
I enjoy going through models quite a bit. It's a fun process.
Yeah, and one more thing that I've experienced over the last while is it's all good and well having a model, and Justin Thomas ranks number one in my model almost all the time, even with John Rahm in the field because it's heavy on approach, heavy around the green, but he hasn't won in the last year. So you really just have to let it speak to you, and then you decide, okay, do I think this person can actually win a golf tournament? Like that's kind of how you have to go about it. Like Russell Henley, going to pop in the models. You got to have guys that. So for top 20 bets, when the pressure isn't on, those stats are a lot more realistic. They can be repeated by these players. They're going to live up to those stats. But you put anyone under pressure on a Sunday, and those stats just go out the window. You got to have that X factor.
Yeah, and I mean, this week being a major, I think that only emphasizes it even more.
Yeah.
More pressure, and we could probably cancel or cross out, a few more names just due to the fact that it is a major this week. So, yeah, good point. Thanks for sharing that. So, I don't
Yeah.
want to skip over your proximity model here, though. Like you said, you did
Yes.
split it up a little bit. When I was first doing my own research, I thought this was going to be a long irons course, very similar to the last few weeks. But since we have two par fives, right? It's gonna make things a little bit different. So talk about these proximities. Another question for you too. How do you get to these numbers? It probably seems like a simple math equation, right? But talk about that process a little bit. What specific number do you use to get to these proximity ranges?
Cool. Yeah, no. So I just pretty much took the yardage of the hole and I subtracted 310 yards, which is pretty much the maximum drive that you're going to have on average. I think the driving average on tour is like 303 yards, but they're going to be playing in Oklahoma. You presume it's dry. The fairways are wider. The rough isn't as penal. So if you're hitting it, it's going to go a little further. It just gives you a good situation. Then you just subtract that from the yardage of the hole. It's like a theoretical approach. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect science. You never know if guys are hitting three woods or what, but it gives you a good. All we're trying to do is get a picture of what we're expecting. And you can see here, even if you switch some buckets up and down, it's still going to look a lot like a lot of 175-yard shots and in, which is for a 7,500-yard golf course, like you were saying, it doesn't necessarily appear that way. So it is kind of interesting. And then I kind of read through the course breakdown on the PGA Tour website where they kind of describe how the hole is played. And those two par fives are mentioned. They're too long to get into. So you're going to be laying up. There's a short par four that is drivable if you want to go for it, but there's a lot of danger and it's ideal to lay up to a certain point. So, that's what's giving all those proximity ranges between 75 and 100. are the holes that you'd think require the longer shot in, but they kind of forcing you to lay up. So it's an interesting, it's just a prediction and an estimate, and it's very theoretical in nature. Wind can affect it, obviously. So, but it's going to be helpful to know. I do think so.
Yeah, no, it was very helpful for me because most weeks, right, we have Fantasy National, we have Data Golf to just take 10 seconds, plug in the course there, right, and they'll give us all these proximity numbers split up and do perfect percentages, right? But not this week with it, being another new course, right, or a course that we haven't seen in a while. There isn't any data on this course, so I think all of us on Twitter, of course, really appreciate that because I would have probably went with the long irons this week, just looking at the long yardage of the course. But when you break it down like that, it definitely makes a lot more sense. So yeah, well done on that.
Yeah, no, thank you. And yeah, like I said, it's very theoretical. Obviously, I don't know how the hills and things will affect all of that, but we're just looking for a nice big picture. And it's, if we jump a few buckets, it's looking like 175, and then it's going to be plenty of those golf shots this week.
Cool. Yeah, I like it. Any other key stats that you're looking at this week, or anything that you want to talk about in the stats side of things before we jump ahead and look at the field?
No, I think we've covered all the key stats that I mentioned earlier, and it's going to be interesting. I also do include 10% of my model includes official world golf ranking. So for instance, Rory McIlroy doesn't grade out statistically as well as everyone else because of last year's if he played, but because he's so highly ranked, it kind of just nudges him up the model a little bit more.
Okay.
So because that is a high correlation of success on tour is obviously official world golf ranking points. So
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
I like that. Well, if you have other, as the viewers, if you have other questions on stats, you can obviously reach out to us on Twitter. You can find Byron's his spreadsheet here as well as his model. Post that on Twitter every single week. You can find my stat breakdown on my article on fantasy points. That's on my Twitter as well. So let's go ahead and get into this field a little bit. I'm going to change up the view quite a bit. There are quite a few, golfers in that 12 to 20 range. We'll talk about those first here if I can work my computer. There we go.
There we
So
go.
let me zoom in on that as well. So John Rahm's going to kick it off here. Always, recommend using odds checker. Whoops, there we go. When we do this, of course, find the best odds out there. I'm sure a lot of these numbers have changed as not just as today has gone on, but as the week's gone on with things changing at the Byron Nelson, some players withdrawing potentially. A lot of these numbers will go up and down. Do you have any, before we get into the field, I guess, do you have any bets that you placed before today or before yesterday that are, long time bets for the PGA Championship here?
Yes, I do. I I have I had a free bet for Colin Morikawa, which I'm not really gonna really publish that too much. It was a $25 free bet that I used. But let's go with Seamus Power that I put actual money on at 210 to 1 a while ago. Kevin Na 200 to 1, Sam Burns 90 to 1, and then I grabbed Cam Smith in the middle of that the Masters at 45.
Okay.
So I like those four guys. I'm apart from Sam Burns, I really like the other three at those numbers too. So we'll see what the boys can get up to.
I like it. I like it. I rarely do that a whole lot. I guess I'm still getting used to. I'm still getting better at this whole outright thing. I used to be more of a DFS thing, but I'm really looking at the outrights now. I actually have one pre PGA Championship bet, and it was Scotty Scheffler. I placed it at the Masters, so I don't have that beautiful 40 to 1 ticket that we've seen on Twitter quite a bit this week. It was just a 20 to 1, but when he was taken down or, just drilling pins at Augusta, I had to take advantage of that because I knew it was going to go down regardless. So
absolutely. I mean, that's still a good ticket, dude. I honestly think so. I mean, 600 points at 14 to 20, that's a lot. It's a big jump. So it saves you some cash for sure. It's a good play.
For sure. And it is one of those that I actually feel like could hit, right? I mean, if you're taking Tiger when he was 90 to 1 or whatever those odds are, I mean, it was likely have a much lower chance of hitting than Scheffler, of course, too. So that's the one that I'm hanging on to this week. It actually is probably going to help me out when I build the rest of my card because I don't have to jam in one of those top favorites up there just for some safety reasons. I got that in my back pocket. So Let's break down the top of this board here really quick. Again, John Rahm heads the top of the odds board just a few weeks off of his win at the Mexico Open. He had that, rough start to the year, but in my opinion, it was nice to see him win. I'm sure there was a lot of pressure not getting a victory since I think the U.S. Open, so that was good to see. I'll ask you here about these two, Rahm and Scheffler. Again, the hottest golfer on the planet right now, Scotty Scheffler. He sits right behind Rahm. Southern Hills was actually the location of Scheffler's Big 12 championship victory when he was playing in college. So he has played here before. He's played well here, and he's also, like I said, the hottest golfer on the planet Earth right now. I got to ask you, if you had to pick one of these two to win, regardless of the odds, who are you playing this week?
Scotty, 100% Scotty. I think his approach play is going to suit this golf course a lot better from the wedges. Shorter golf clubs in, and around the green. He's probably one of the best. If you put him in a bush next to the green, he'll get up and down for four. Between him and Cam Smith, those two guys just can scramble from anywhere. And I think that's critical this week. And Rahm hasn't necessarily proved all that much recently that he's got it around the greens. He managed to get around a very easy golf course at in Mexico. So hopefully he can get it together, but I'd definitely go with Scotty. I think he's just got the whole overall package. Rahm obviously a better ball striker, but around the green, Scotty's got him by a million miles.
I'm with you. That's really what separates it for me is his around the green game. I know it's just a stat, anything can happen, right? But I said Rahm won at the Mexico Open, but you said it as well. It was a pretty easy course, and it was also a relatively weak field. I think if it was just half as half as better of a field, I don't know if he would have won that one. He won it by just a stroke over a couple of scrubs there. So I don't know. I don't want to talk down on Rahm because he can easily go out and win this thing. But when you're pairing him up against Scotty, same odds, right? Very similar price on DraftKings. I'm assuming the ownership will be similar as well. You really just need to find those small ways to pick the two apart there, and I'm doing the same thing. He's 7th in approach, 10th in strokes gained short game, or just really good on around the green in general. And Ron had that slow start to the year. Yes, like I said, he won a couple weeks ago. He's going to have the momentum. I'm sure that maybe got the monkey off of his back a little bit. Rahm does play really solid on these difficult courses. U.S. Open victory, plays well at Memorial every year. But I just like Scheffler right now. He's playing so well. I'm not really buying he's too hot. He's got to come down eventually, right? I've just bought that too much that it's burned me every single time that he's won.
Absolutely, dude. And I think I listened to him on Foreplay or something, Foreplay Pod, and just the way he goes about it was right before the Masters, because that's what really sold me on him then is I don't care. It's what's happened has happened. We're going into the Masters to win this thing as if I've done nothing prior. He's got his one event at a time, one hole at a time. He's so grounded, just treating his wife like he's always treated her, just such a human. And I think that's what's really helped him stay in the zone, but he hasn't been playing a lot of golf recently either. So it'll be interesting to see if that momentum carries over with him or not. But I think he'll be okay.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I agree. He carries himself so well. He's very admirable. He's fun to root for too. There's not many negative or hateable things about Scheffler. So, but we don't need to talk about these two very much more. They're probably going to be two of the best plays on the slate here. The rest of the odds here, let me get it pulled back up so I can see it. So after him, of course, we got Rahm, we have Rahm and Scheffler up top there. Very similar odds between him and Rory, who comes up next. Brooks, those are some pretty low odds. I don't know if that is correct. I thought I saw 45 to 1 on Brooks.
Yeah, I agree.
I got the wrong odds here, don't I? Yeah, let's get this turned around.
Oh,
there we go. Yeah, there we go. Sorry. Clicked the wrong one.
I mean, okay. It's pretty close anyway. There we go.
True. There we go. Sorry about that. So yeah, very similar except for Brooks. That's how we can tell the difference there, of course. So So after Scheffler, we got Rory McIlroy, of course, Justin Thomas, who let you down last week, but I do think he's going to be a popular bet once again this week. Jordan Spieth, Morikawa, Cantlay, Cameron Smith, and I will end it here at Dustin Johnson. Who sticks out to you this group? Who are you betting? Who are you maybe playing in DraftKings and DFS? Who do you like?
I think I'm going to bet Jordan Spieth at
My man.
18. I just think, he's got it all right now. He's ball striking the hell out of it. He's peaking. He's super confident. He's got the putting, major issue. Very, very concerned about that. It's pretty much on the same level as Cam Smith's snapbooks off the tee, but everything else about his game is just steak sauce. It's just beautiful stuff. I I couldn't wish for a better golfer to attack this golf course. If he can just sink all those 8-footers that he normally can, it's he's got it all this week. I really
I'm
like
with you.
him.
I like Spieth. He's been playing so well. Victory at the RBC, runner up last week at Byron Nelson. He's got the experience in this, the area of the country, right? Texas, Oklahoma, that area. He gained 11 strokes and 13 strokes tee to green in the last two events. His putter, of all things, has been killing him recently, especially at the RBC, which he won. Right? He was
Yeah,
actually positive last week with the putter. Didn't quite pay off with the victory, but on those birdie fests, anyone can win, of course. I just really think Spieth, he's looking to complete that Grand Slam, right? The career Grand Slam of majors. I think
yeah,
he's got his eyes set on that. He doesn't have the pressure of he needs a victory right now since he won at RBC not too long ago. I mentioned it earlier. I think of Spieth at the Open, the British Open last year, which was played on a course that again has a lot of slopes, had some windy conditions too. So that's kind of why I'm leaning towards Spieth there. I'm really with you on that. I got a 20-1 number on him. I slammed that right away. So
that's
I
such
like
a good point, Hunter. Actually, sorry, the wind and the conditions and the he did mention in the at the British that he played a lot better because he was just feeling it. And I think he's one of the best at just absolutely molding golf shots to the slopes, to the wind, to the different things. And I think on Southern Hills, there's going to be slopes and hills and, like you said, contours, which I think he's so fantastic at dealing with from the approach side of things as well. And then around the green, obviously, a classic Spieth. But
yeah.
I just
No,
thought definitely agree on that point with you there.
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's got that magic around the greens, like we all say. So I like that. So I just noticed this in the chat. We had Spencer in the chat. I don't know if you see this on your side there, but
Yeah.
he'd like you to answer questions about why Jason Day will be winning the PGA Championship this week.
Well, Jason Day, Spence, is, obviously capable of elite ball striking. We all know about that. And like you've said to me many times, it just takes 4 days. And he is 4 days away from a PGA championship. He's got the world-class short game, and he's popping on the approach side now. Just keep the back end steady, keep it on ice. Don't do too crazy. Make sure the RV is close to the golf course. And I think he'll be okay. I think he's going to be a great contender this week.
For sure. Shout out to Spencer. I appreciate
Yes.
him joining in here. He's
Talk about models, man. Yeah. Let's
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I've certainly
So,
learned a lot from him, and I appreciate that he puts that out for free every single week. It's been a great learning resource, as well as a
yeah,
great resource to make some money too. So, shout out to Spencer there.
absolutely. Absolutely.
All right, so let's look at the rest of the kind of this middle section. This is where I typically tend to go towards, especially during major championships. Mainly because I'm not really betting golf for 12-1 odds. That's just my personal preference. I would rather play those guys in DraftKings. I don't know. That's just me, I guess. I'd like to go into this range here, especially during majors. We'll talk about some long shots a little bit, but I really do think one of these top players is going to win this week. Again, we'll talk about some longer shots here in a second, but I love this section of the odds board. One guy that's sticking out to me this week, of course, is Hideki Matsuyama, who had a great finish yesterday at the Byron Nelson. He's been just playing so well recently since his Masters victory last year. He's got 3 wins in the last 13 months. He hasn't missed a cut since August. He's playing really consistently. He did have the WD in Texas, so I guess you could consider that a missed cut. But I think he was
He
actually
was
playing.
making the cut that week. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think he was actually playing well.
Yeah.
So I don't know why. Like you brought up, I hate to do this, but you brought up like Justin Thomas earlier. Like he hasn't won in over a year, right? Hideki's won 3 times in the last year on a variety of courses. He
Yeah.
won at the Sony, which was tough. He won at the Zozo, which was a little tougher. Or sorry, the Sony was easy. Zozo was a little tougher, and then Augusta, of course, was one of the toughest.
Yeah.
So consistent, hasn't missed a cut since August. Finished 14th at Augusta this year. He ranked 5th in strokes gained around the green, 8th in tee to green. T3 last week at the Byron Nelson, he gained over 9 strokes on approach, and he shot a 10 under par in the final round as well. Besides being negative in or slightly negative in strokes gained putting, he ranks in the top 50 in every major stat category within this field. He's positive in every stat category besides putting. Again, he hasn't missed a cut since August. So if you're looking for a safe play, especially for a cheaper play in the lower $9,000 range on DraftKings, I really like Hideki. I think I have that number right. But what are you doing with Hideki this week? Do you like that call, or who else do you like in this range?
Yeah, in my little Breaking 100 article I do for rotoballer.com is I pick out, I have a certain amount of betting money that we do for outrights. And it was between, after going to Spieth, I was staring at Shane Lowry and Hideki Matsuyama as my two guys that I want to take in the 33, 35 range. And they both have very similar traits. And I think the deciding factor for me was just Shane Lowry's putting. In a major, I think Hideki can be a very different kettle of fish as well, because his ball striking can just overpower his crappy putter. But Shane has got that ball striking too, as well as a putter that can absolutely bail him out if need be. So I went with Shane. I really did like Hideki as well. So we'll see. And Hideki is one of my favorite parts about him is he's just beautiful from all proximity ranges as well. So at this golf course, with all these different shots that they're going to require, he's got it. And the same goes for Shane. He's really impressive too across the board. So yes, I have him, and then obviously that Sam Burns long shot, and Xander is one of those guys that pops in the model all the time, but he and Rory both just, when they're out of the competition, just come rising up that leaderboard and then they just run out of holes. But they didn't, because they messed up early, and the same with Justin. They just can't get off to these starts and keep themselves in contention long enough. So that was a big, no for me for Xander again, even after his incredible play last week. So.
Yeah, Xander is an X factor this week for sure. I don't really know what I'm going to do with him. I'm not betting him, of course, but in DFS, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get there. There's so many good plays in that 9K range there. Yeah, classic Xander though, coming back on a Sunday.
Insane, dude. Insane. I couldn't believe what he did. That was
so true. Speechless. After some of those shots. So, kind of piggybacking off of some of the stuff you said here, Shane Lowry, dude, has been playing so well this year. Is it not the best year that he's ever played? I know he hasn't won yet, I guess, but he's playing some very consistent golf. I'm just looking at his data golf page. Hasn't missed a cut since November, so another consistent player here. All of his he has one start that's worse than 30th place.
That's insane.
Yeah, he's got 4 top 5s. He's got a bunch of, top 15s. The match play is the one that I'm looking at. That's the T35. So you can't even really consider that. So everything else was T24 or better. Some of those being on the Euro Tour. So yeah, man, he's been playing so well. I like that call quite a bit.
And he's so close. He just had literally one hole. It was at Honda. It was when the monsoon came down for one hole. It was at Augusta. He hit it into the bamboo. I didn't even know there was bamboo on Augusta premises. Shane Lowry hit into the bamboo and made I think a triple on one of the par 3s. I think he made a 6. And then he chipped it in the water at the RBC. All 3 of those is literally, it's like one hole that defined his whole golf tournament. So if he can, he's been in those moments now. He's felt the pain. I think he's going to, embrace it. And it's a major. He's a major winner too. He's won the Open. If it gets windy, he's the guy. So I really like Shane Lowry this week.
Yeah, I like that. I might have to jump on there. My card's getting a little busy
heavy
right now. So might be more of a DFS thing for me. He's got a really solid price. I think it was only 8,700. There's no reason why he couldn't be in the 9Ks this week. So
yeah, and if you look at the last 24 rounds total, he's second in the field behind Scotty Scheffler. That's how I've been playing. It's insane.
Those are 3 really consistent golfers this year: Scheffler, Lowry, and Matsuyama. I know we had the injury with him, but guys that just have not missed cuts and have been finishing at the top of the board quite a bit.
Insane.
Yeah.
No, we are so spoiled, dude. The golf is in the golden age right now. We are just seeing such fantastic stuff from so many guys. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Watching,
It really is. It's a fun time to be a golf fan. And that's why I think one of these guys or above here is going to win. There's just so much top talent here. It's going to be a tough course. We'll kind of see, of course, but we'll move down the odds boards a little bit. Another guy who's been playing consistent. He let us down yesterday. Joaquin Neiman. I'm going back and forth if I'll have him on my card or not yet. I know for sure I got Hideki. I have Spieth. Those are my two for sure's right now, but I'm still going back and forth on Neiman right now. Again, he's just been another consistent golfer. He only has one missed cut this year, which came the week after his victory at the Genesis. So I don't really blame him too much for that. He probably had a little bit, maybe too much tequila celebrating that potentially. But very similar to Hideki, he's got no weak spots in his game right now. He's green in every stat category. He's top 35 in all major stats that we look at besides putting. He's a decent bent grass putter. That's not his best, but he's not negative in that, I believe. Again, he's just let us down recently. That's my one worry with him. He started off so great at the Masters, kind of faded over the weekend, which I'm willing to forgive a little bit. But his round yesterday, I know it's just one round, but it's two events in a row now where he started off strong Thursday, Friday, and then he's kind of fell down the board a little bit, or just maybe isn't playing as consistent when the weekend hits. Do you have any explanation for that, or do you like Neiman this week?
I like him, but I don't think I'm gonna. He's got enough combustibility to avoid him if he gets too owned. For my opinion, happy to go elsewhere with that price range. Like Daniel Berger's just right above him, and he's a lot safer. If you want a guy like that who's not necessarily as much upside, but he's super safe and solid. Doesn't have that. I don't know. I don't know if he's got a new girlfriend or what's going on, because you don't just play 3 rounds and then he lost 5 strokes to the field yesterday, dude. Yeah. 5 strokes to the field yesterday. It's just terrible stuff, and it's all mental. It's got nothing to do with his mechanics. It's got nothing to do with confidence. It's just whatever is going on inside his pip is just causing him to just leave the premises. So, that if he's going to be 20+% owned, I'm happy to let everyone have that roller coaster.
Yeah.
So,
I didn't think he'd be that high, but it seems like it's getting up. I think just the price is so low on him. He's another guy that could probably be in the 9s. I don't know. Ownership is probably too high. Looking at that number, honestly, it's not the greatest number. I think he was like 65-1 to win the Masters, and that was a little more attractive to me back then. So, I'm probably, we'll see. That's where I'll stand on it.
Yeah, if you're looking for something in the 45s there, I'd probably go Matty Fitzpatrick. He's got all the stuff that you need. He's got that around the green, and he's a lot more consistent as well. So and plays tough courses extremely well, according to everyone in the world. So yeah,
true. Yeah, he always comes up when bogey avoidance is a major theme each week. So I know you got the Sam Burns ticket. Anyone else in this range here before we get to one of the most popular rookies that we've seen in a while?
I mean, Jason Day has obviously got winning potential at 80, like Spencer said. Louis as well at 80-1. If it comes to a scrambling situation, he's phenomenal around the greens. And then obviously Max Homa, I'm just rattling off names, but will Max be able to go back to back? And I guess the nice thing about his situation is he's had a week in between, which I think a lot of the issues with winning back to back is you got to deal with all the press and stuff post win. That's all behind him now. And he suits this game so nicely. If he can repeat what he did at the Wells Fargo, I think, which is obviously very difficult to do, but he's fantastic fit for this field. I am looking at Keegan Bradley over there though at 90-1, and Keegan Bradley is 10th in the field this week of the last 24 rounds putting. That's Keegan Bradley, who is a perennially bad putter, and he seems to have found something. And everything else about his game is fantastic. His ball striking is fine. His approach is fine. His around the greens fine. His bogey avoidance is fine. He's a really safe golfer, and he's at 90-1. He almost won the Wells Fargo if it wasn't for Max. So, had some, and now he's been just recently, right before a major, he was in contention. So when he is in contention this Sunday, he's going to have been there just recently, so he can draw on those nerves. And I'm loving Keegan this week, dude. I've got big hopes for him. He's going to be in a lot of my lineups as well.
I like that. I wonder where his ownership will end up. I'll have to look into that a little
Mm,
bit. But yeah, I like that call quite a bit. Yeah, you're right. If it wasn't for Homa, he was winning that golf tournament. Kind of sad to see him kind of crumble a little bit on Sunday, but that happens to the best of them. He's just been playing really well, like you said. I like that quite a
yeah.
bit. Very consistent golfer as of recently. So
Yeah, and now
um,
he's putting well, which is,
yeah,
that for me is the most attractive part of his game, and it's been happening since the players. So
true. Yeah, we've always said, right, like if he can putt, he's going to go out and win a golf tournament, and that's what he's been doing. He's been, you know, ending up at the top of the leaderboards a lot here. I like that quite a bit. If approach is going to be as important as it sounds like it's going to be, you need those guys that can hit greens, and he's certainly one of them. So
oh yeah,
I like that. Um, a couple other guys here. I mentioned Cameron Young, most popular rookie bet probably in a while. Oh, I guess we've had these a lot recently. Zalatoris, Mito had a little bit of that last year. I think Cameron Young really, I don't want to say is getting past those two what they were at, but he's really becoming a popular bet. 80 to 1 is probably way I'm definitely off on that. When I wrote him up in my article, I thought he was going to be closer to that 120, 130, even closer 150 if you can get that obviously. Well, you can't get that now, but um I just don't see as great as he's been playing. He has so many top fives this year for a rookie. I just don't see him going out there and winning this. I like him more in the placement market. I could see him maybe getting a top 10 potentially, but I'm not really into that, especially when there's some great names around here. I mean, Max freaking Homa just won a couple of weeks ago. He's probably going to be my favorite within this range. Another great ball striker. He actually is rated pretty well and around the green as well. I'll have to double check on that, but yeah, I like Max Homa a little bit. He's shown us that he can play really well on these hard courses, like he did a couple weeks ago. So I like that call.
oh yeah, yeah. And Cam Young, my biggest concern heading into this week was the fact that he's around the green game. Prior to the last few weeks has been sketchy, but over the last 4 or 5 events, I think he's been all green, dude. So it's his game. He's now on tour full time. He can really focus on what he needs to and highlight the situations that he has to improve on. And I think he's done that. And it's only a matter of time. It would be insane if his first win was a USPGA.
Yeah, that's the other thing too is it's hard to imagine someone getting their first win, especially on their first year on tour, right?
Yeah,
At a major, of course. So,
yeah,
I could see him being at the top of the leaderboard, but then when Sunday hits, maybe falling down a little bit just because first time being there in a major. So, we got a few minutes left here. I definitely want to get to the bottom of the board here. I feel like it's literally impossible to do a DFS or betting show without talking about one of the greatest golfers of all time, the greatest golfer of all time. I'll ask you real quick. Will Tiger make the cut? Yes or no?
no,
We're gonna end the show here.
I
I'm
don't
just kidding.
I don't know, man. It's weird. I
I'm with
think
you.
if if you were to ask me if it was Augusta, I'd say yes
Yeah.
because I think that's his backyard. But he's also been living at Southern Hills for the last 2 weeks, so can I change it to maybe? I don't know. I
Okay.
mean, he's obviously at his best. He's insane, but I don't know, man. It's
I'm
a
with
tough
you.
golf course.
I'm with you. I talked about it in my article too. I think fitness will actually play a little bit of an impact. I'm not fading Shane Lowry because of that alone, of course, but
Yeah.
this course is going to require him to walk around a bunch. Everyone's going to talk about it this week, so I won't waste time talking about it, but it's just going to require him to work much harder than he did at Augusta. He definitely faded after the first couple of rounds at Augusta, but like I said, it's going to be a different course, and you said it as well. It's his backyard, at the Masters. So, and also his putting was terrible there. And if putting's
Mhm.
going to be more important, or if it's going to be as important here, I could see him potentially missing the weekend. So,
Yeah. And
um,
if I remember correctly, the majority of his scoring was done on par fives.
I
So
think you're right.
he feasted on those par fives around Augusta because I mean it's like the back of his hand. And yeah, we are. We're gonna. He's not going for these greens. He's gonna be hitting wedges in, and if they're not dialed, he's making fives on those. So
Yeah.
I don't know, man. But it'll be interesting.
Yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you. Um, Final minutes here. Give me some long shots that you like. I know you were tweeting some out before with those awesome Photoshop skills that I was talking about. Who do you like for some long shots this week? And give me a little explanation why.
Yep, Seamus Power right over there. He's one of the safer players as well. His irons have just been struggling a little bit, but he is one of the best putters on bent grass. Got incredible around the green game, and his bogey avoidance is money. Have him at that 210, which I'd click at a 125 as well. And then Alex Noren. Alex Noren is the best bent putter in the field, and he's also, I think, inside the top 15 in recent approach last 24 rounds. He's a decent drive of the golf ball, and he can get around a tough golf course. He's around the green game's pretty solid, and his putting is on bent is the best in the field over the last 50 rounds. So he's got that X factor on these greens, and they're very difficult greens. So if he can light it up there, I think he's in good shape. He's got that approach and putting, which I really at 150. He just finished 11th at this last year. I think he's had 4 top 20s in his last few starts. So he's been playing fantastic golf.
Yeah, he is, and I go back and forth on him. I used to think he was a birdie scorer, but he does have some good results on tough courses as well. I'm just pulling up his data golf page here. He's got a decent history in majors. He has a few top 20s, no top 10s that I can see, but at that number, especially on DraftKings too, I think he's only 7,000. I really like him as a DFS play too. I think he'll get some popularity, but yeah, I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, and if you're looking to jump over from him in DFS, Seamus Power is also, I think he's going to be the same ownership, but check out Keegan Bradley. I think he's not going to go as owned as people expect. So hopefully.
I like that call quite a bit. I don't mind Billy Horschel. I know he's a little bit farther up there. He's another guy who's been playing really consistent golf as of late. I think he has some decent results on PGA Championship too, or in PGA Championships as well. So don't mind that as well. There's some guys that are going to be thrown out this week. Patrick Reed, Taylor Gooch, with the Oklahoma narrative.
Yeah.
Anyone else down here? Like I said, I personally think it's going to be one of the favorites up top there. I know that's not a fun, prediction, right? But anyone else that you want to throw out here?
Charles Schwartzel. I do like how Charles playing right now as well. Yeah. And with all these bunkers, South Africans are fantastic out of the bunkers, and Charles been striking the ball really nicely. And I think he changed to that broomstick putter last week, one of Adam Scott's old ones. So if he can, he's got now a full round under his belt. He's going to have a few more, practice days to get that dialed in. He was neutral putting last week, and the rest of his stats were all money. And then, I mean, wow, look at the discrepancy in Matt Kuchar's there as well. So
that is insane. He's another guy who's been playing really consistent as of late.
Yeah, and he can get up and down pretty much with the best of them too. Mainly on that putter, which is money. So but
cool. No, I like it. Any final thoughts, I guess, or anything else that you want to throw out there that might be important this week? I know I've been really grilling you with questions today. I really appreciate you giving me all these awesome answers. Anything else that you want to talk about for the event before we plug our information here?
No, I think we've done a fantastic job of covering it all. It's been a blast being on the show with you. I know we've been chatting about doing it for too long now. I'm glad we can finally get into it. And it's going to just be fun. I think it's going to be such a beautiful course to watch. It's going to be that creek is going to cause. I'm going to do like a creek counter or something and just see if we can, see who gets the most balls in the water. It's going to be spectacular. So I don't really have much more to say other than thank you.
Oh, of course, man. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I think you're right. I think the creek is going to be a big impact this week. We don't really see that a whole lot. So I like that call quite a bit. But thanks for coming on, man. Where can we find you on Twitter? Where can we find some of your awesome content that you put out each week? Plug your information.
Yeah, thanks. Catch me at The Model Maniac on Twitter. I will put out my Breaking 100 article for rotoballer.com here tomorrow. It's if your wife gets mad at you for betting, maybe just follow the Breaking 100, kind of get an idea of how you want to structure your betting cards. And then tomorrow evening, I do my podcast, Back Nine Bets, that kind of have my model on the screen, show all the different numbers, all the different color codes, and kind of just go through all my top 20, top 30, top 40 bets, first round leaders, outrights, and some DFS plays and stuff. So it's going on tomorrow for me. So yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, you're highly entertaining, man. You're very knowledgeable on what you're talking about as well. I really appreciate you coming on, and I hope that you can cash maybe a Keegan Bradley outright ticket this week.
Me too. Let's go, Keegan.
You bet. Well, thanks for coming on. Thanks
All right,
for
buddy.
everyone for watching this week. You can catch us at Fantasy Points PGA on Twitter. I believe I have that handle right. I'm Huntman10 on Twitter. This is the Model Maniac on Twitter. Thanks for joining me today, Byron, and good luck this week, everybody.